Rather than ask, what can money do for you? Let's consider the question, what can money do to you? Eric Lee, you've named your show Better Conversations, the Life and Money podcast. So let's talk. I'm Patrice Sikora, and I'll start things off with what might be a slightly uncomfortable question. If someone listening doubled their net worth tomorrow, would their life actually change?
Interesting. For many high achievers, no. For many business owners, no. And that's actually a problem.
So, okay, you're saying then doubling your net worth, no, there may not be any change whatsoever.
No. I mean, for a lot of people, they're comfortable in their lifestyle. They have the house they want. They have the car they want. They take nice vacations. The retirement plan is solid. The numbers are strong.
Mm-hmm.
And they wouldn't change their life. And that's a problem. And what the problem is a problem of clarity and purpose of really what's the money for.
So successful people are not necessarily content. They're restless.
Yeah, there's what we see is a lot of professionals and business owners, they spend their entire life craving financial stability
Mm-hmm.
and in doing everything they can to optimize, pull all the levers of the management of their money. And they get to a point where they're restless. They've achieved it, but it's an unfulfilled feeling oftentimes, unfocused, and just this restlessness with their money. You know, there's many people that have a number in mind. They want to achieve and accumulate a certain amount of dollars, and they get there and there's this empty feeling. And the inclination is, well, maybe I just need more. And they continue to build this fortress, but not actually change the way they're living. And using the money as a tool. So the money becomes a scoreboard of which on paper they're winning, but in life, they're still not completely fulfilled. And that's a misalignment of what the money is for, of meaning and purpose behind the money.
Yeah. So if I could just take that another step, it sounds like they're creating more stress for themselves, but with this lack of clarity. But isn't money supposed to reduce stress? At least that's what we believe. That's what we're taught. More money will make you less stressful.
Yeah, it does, for sure. So it can reduce that financial stress day to day, but it also elevates a psychological stress many times.
Mm-hmm.
Many people, despite having more money, can't stop. I mean, they've been builders, achievers all their life, and their identity is focused on building, doing more, and not stepping away, not finding different purpose behind their money is what's often missing. So to spend more, give away more, and to stop accumulating feels oftentimes like a threat to their identity. Their ego, their self-worth is tied to succeeding and building and accumulating. And they haven't found anything with their money to replace those feelings of their identity of always achieving.
It almost sounds like there's loss there, loss of identity, a loss of purpose. It sounds like they're afraid. There's fear there.
There's a lot of very successful business owners, professionals that do have a fear of losing it all. I mean, that's real. And that's grounded in all kinds of childhood and life experiences of witnessing and maybe experiencing themselves a loss of financial security.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very difficult to work through. But other times it's just a lack of purpose of just not knowing what to do with the money that would be meaningful to make an impact. And so their default is just to keep growing. So for example, I've had many clients in their mid 50s that have achieved a level of success where they could stop and maintain their lifestyle, replace their paycheck with their investments. And there's an interesting question of, would you rather stop today, live off your money and be done? Or would you rather keep working for another 5-7 years or a little longer and double your money? And it's surprising how many people would choose to work longer and have more money, but don't really have a reason why they need more money.
It's a safety thing, a security thing?
I think the problem is we've been trained so well to optimize the management of our money and to be ingrained to grow it. And many people use the term that they're conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that's code for I'm going to accumulate and collect my money and not spend it. And so we've been trained to grow it and to optimize the management of it, but we haven't been trained to build purpose with it. And that's an opportunity for people to grow and learn more about what's important to them and what's important to the money they have.
Yeah.
So many people are overfunding their security and underfunding purpose.
Right.
Because more money doesn't necessarily bring more peace of mind or alleviate their need for security.
It doesn't bring you joy.
It doesn't. I'm just going to pick a number out of the hat here, but for many people, the number, let's say I want to get to $5 million and to feel safe. And then they think, well, maybe eight will make me a little safer. And then there's 8 and they think, well, maybe 12 wouldn't be so bad. Or, I mean, it just never, there's no ceiling. The point is there's no ceiling to security. Those that are craving security don't ever really tend to get rid of those fears
Mm-hmm.
that live with them. And it's a matter of trying to create better alignment with their money and working through that. So it's really hard to move from a period of this fear of losing it all or of shrinking and losing my identity and slowing down and not being known as the builder. And I had a client just recently tell me he's a builder. I mean, not in the literal sense, but he likes
to create things. Yeah.
Creating things. Yeah. And the idea of stopping and just maintaining is very fearful for him. But that's now an alignment of really what's this money for and how can you replace that and make more impact maybe to your family, your community, to society and so forth in a different way.
Well, let's just tackle that right on. What is money for?
Money just has 3 jobs. The first we've been talking about is security. Money provides security. Absolutely important. It's the base of Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
That's right.
right? But then money's other job is to give you freedom. And lastly, to provide meaning. So that's money's job. Money has just 3 jobs: security, freedom, and meaning.
They're pretty important words, though. I mean, let's start with security. Talk more about security and money.
It's survival, your income, your security, preventing catastrophe financially, a retirement income. And most of our listeners have that pretty well under control, I would think. They have that. But then there's freedom as well.
Okay.
And it's kind of a waterfall. Most people don't really, there's a lot of people, I wouldn't say most, but a lot of people never get out of this need for security and they just continue to overfund it and never really work into how money can provide freedom and then purpose. So they continue to build this fortress, but they never step outside of the fortress.
Do you have any clients who have reached that point and understood that there is freedom and they've made changes?
Yeah, but it's just, there's no, for a lot of people, there's no ceiling to security, and security never tells you when to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Some people transition different. So what's freedom? Freedom's the ability to say no, take back your time, have options, be done, just control over your time.
But again, has anybody that you've seen had an epiphany and said, wow, I can do this now. I don't have to worry. I have the freedom.
For sure. And that's the traditional retirement.
Okay.
Okay, and that's a traditional retirement. I had a client with me yesterday. She's very accomplished, successful executive, loves her job, but just is done with the race to climb the ladder, the corporate ladder, not interested. And that's a sense of freedom where I don't need this. I'm secure. I don't need to play this corporate game. I just want to work in a fulfilling way, and I don't need to grow more. And that's a conscious decision of knowing how much is enough, and then getting more
comfortable and be comfortable with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I should think maybe as time goes on, once you've said, all right, I am going to step off the ladder, maybe you get comfortable with it and you start to have some fun.
But it's clear of what you're trying to get off of and go to.
Okay.
And that's where the fears of financial security are with a lot of people forever, and just not knowing how much is enough that they can.
And I think that leads us to meaning.
Yeah, meaning's tricky.
How so?
Because it's more intimate, it's more vulnerable, it's harder to talk about. And a lot of traditional high achieving professionals, business owners want to continue to focus on the control rather than this bigger picture of how do we make a bigger impact?
Yeah.
And so it's meaning is how do I make my relationships better? How do I make my community better? How do I make my family stronger? How do I experience more? How do I create a legacy? It requires a deeper insight into what your really values are and what's important to you beyond just having enough to live day to day. But there's definitely a point where people can feel like they have enough and make this transition to making a bigger impact.
In your experience, when people realize they want to have a legacy, is that when they start delving more into meaning and what they have money-wise?
Yeah, for sure. That's one of them. But it's difficult for a lot of people to get there because they're tied up in all kinds of emotions of fear, never really knowing if they have enough.
Sure.
A lot of people feel guilt and shame that they shouldn't be spending money or giving money away based on maybe past experiences or how it may look to other people, all kinds of things. There's always somebody with more. So people are caught up with comparing, believe it or not, at all levels. Somebody's always got something bigger and better and newer that a lot of people keeps them from stopping and using money in a different way. And then again, like I said, there's the control that the focus is always on. How do I lower my taxes? And all your energy is focused in on the tactical financial planning aspects of money management rather than going into the deeper thoughts of what are we really trying to do?
And I think if you're a business person, a builder, as you're saying, the creator, probably getting into the meaning of things is difficult for you. You are more tactical.
Yeah, for sure. Again, they've spent their whole lives controlling and optimizing. And again, working through these feelings of where your identity is placed in your ego, in your work and what you've built, in making this transition of redeploying money in a different way is oftentimes a feeling of shrinking or reducing themselves. And it's very normal, but it's appropriate to talk about. And many people are just reluctant to go to that level of conversation.
Really? How do you get them to do it?
Just opening up about it, right? Of why?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important to die rich? We've talked about in other episodes of money is just like fuel in your car. The point of money is not to keep it in a vault or to
That's right.
store gasoline, right? To hoard gasoline for your car. You want to have enough security to get where you want to go, but we don't hoard gasoline. And we think of money the same way of what are we trying to do? And when people think about it, then they can, but they're ingrained not to allow themselves to oftentimes.
And there was a recent Cornell study that demonstrated they gave two different groups of students money. One group was supposed to give it away and one was supposed to keep it. and they found the group that gave it away might have been a hard time giving it away to making that step, but when they did, they felt so much better.
Yeah, I believe that. That's consistent throughout time. It's hard to take that step, though. It's hard to start going backwards.
Yeah, you say going backwards. Is it going back? I mean, going backwards and dealing with your fears.
Financially in the balance sheet necessarily.
Sure. But once you have that joy of doing it, does it make it easier? Have you seen people pick it up and increase it?
For sure. It's more just about understanding what is really success and what is meaningful to you, and exploring and giving yourself permission that you could do this. So one of the ways we visit with clients about to getting this place of more purpose and meaning is to simply ask the question, if you knew you couldn't fail, if you knew you couldn't lose your financial security, if you could, ... If you could, what would you do?
Good question.
Takes the pressure off. If you could, or if you won the lottery, what would you do if you could? And that's a place to start and work backwards of what's possible and realistic.
All right. And where does that pivot happen? Where does that change happen?
It happens when people have defined how much is enough. And that's the takeaway, is defining how much is enough.
Right.
And what is security, and not just vaguely, but very specifically and numerically. How much is enough to maintain your lifestyle, for example? And many people just need a lot of clarity around those numbers and confidence before they can make this pivot to a more purposeful and impactful use of their money.
What can trigger that pivot? Is it a thought, a question? What can trigger that? What do you do to help your clients make that turn?
Well, we have a really wonderful tool that we call the Better Conversations exercise. It's about having better conversations, right? And it's just a tool and exercise. Find it on our website, purplewealth.com, to get a start of it. We do it in person, but it's just about identifying what your real values are. What's truly most important to you? Is it important to give a legacy? Is it important to support charity? If it is, why aren't you? But identifying really what your values are. And frankly, a lot of people, their family is incredibly important to them. And it's a process then of defining what you want money to mean for your family and the values around what you've achieved and how you want this to be carried on in future generations. And just having those kinds of conversations of beyond meeting your day-to-day needs, what else do we need to do? What else do we need to think about?
All right. And you actually told me, and I'm going to read this, if you don't define the purpose of your money, you'll default to accumulation forever. Tell me about that.
Yes. If you don't try to make this pivot, your people are ingrained to just keep growing, keep accumulating. And that pivot only happens when you start to define what else is important besides my own security, and you have enough stuff, shiny new toys or whatever, and just defining what is a meaningful life and how money can be this tool to improve your family, your community, your country, everything or those institutions that are important to you.
Is there any point we haven't touched on that you want to make sure we do? And if we haven't, what do you want people to take away from this? What do you want them to do after they've listened to this podcast?
I think the most important thing is just to start simple and determine how much is enough. Again, specifically, how much do I need to live the lifestyle I currently enjoy forever? And that's a tricky question. Most people don't really have that number, and they're seeking that number, and it's not difficult from a financial planner's point of view. But that's the place to start, is where are you? How much is enough? And when you make that determination, then a deeper conversation of what's this all for?
Exactly. What do you do if they say, oh yeah, I have overfunded my security?
Great. That's the step one, is awareness. Step one is just awareness. That's great. And now to take the next step to determine what else is out there and what else would be meaningful and how you can make a bigger impact.
Yeah. So Eric, is there any one last closing thought before we wrap up here?
Just that money's not meant to sit in a vault. And the real risk for a lot of our listeners is not that they're going to run out of money, but they're going to run out of time to use it and to keep it from just growing without a purpose.
All right. How can listeners reach you, Eric?
Eric.lee@purplewealth.com is my email, or find me through purplewealth.com, our website.
Excellent. Well, folks, be sure to follow, like, and share Eric's podcast, and be assured there is more to come. And thanks for being with us. Thank you for listening to Better Conversations, the Life and Money podcast with Eric Lee from Purple Wealth. If this episode sparked something for you, follow the show so you never miss a conversation. You can learn more at www.purplewealth.com or reach out directly. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Purple Wealth is a separate entity from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Any guests and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Purple Wealth. Individual tax or legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.